The Splitting Hairs Podcast. Go big, go blue, go Jacks.
This is the Splitting Hairs Podcast presented by the Wild Hair of Brookings, South Dakota. For those of you who might have forgot, this is the podcast where San Diego's not a state, Bison spelled with an S, and Wile E. Coyote never gets it done in the end. Brian, how's it going, my man?
Doing good, buddy. How are you?
You know, it's another Friday, ready to talk shop. Excited because we're inching ever closer to potentially punching another ticket to Frisco, and that's always exciting. It should be a nice, fun watch tomorrow, starting at 11 a.m. in Brookings. Could be the final dance for a lot of the seniors and this entire makeup of South Dakota State football, but we'll dive into all that and more here quick. Before we do, want to give a shout out to our sponsor, as we mentioned, title sponsor this year and next, the Wild Hair of Brookings, South Dakota. Want to run through their specials that they've got going. Happy hour every day from 3 to 7. All day happy hour on Sundays. So that's NFL Sunday for those of you who are keeping track. And on Tuesdays, $3 Wild Islands on Thursdays. Fireball Friday, that's today. Shots are $3. $1 tequila shots as well, Fridays only. $4 double wells, Wednesdays and Fridays. That's today. Game day specials on Saturday are $10 buckets of domestics and $22 buckets of seltzers for the ladies. You know what I'm talking about. Only during the Jacks games, which they do have showing on all screens, especially the big screen there. So make sure if you're not at the game, which I don't know why you wouldn't be, last chance, get your tails to the Dana. But if you are not able to attend, that's a good second option. Get there and show your support. We appreciate you for joining as a title sponsor this season and next into 2025. Also want to shout out Team Utimark Insurance. They are licensed in Minnesota, South Dakota, and Iowa. They help demystify the medical insurance process. They have plans that work with Medicare. Get with their friendly agents, and they can help navigate life's challenges when you're throwing a curveball and you may need to tap into your medical resources, being insurance in this scenario. Get with them. You can DM me. You can email me. You can follow me on X, and I can give you more insight on how to connect with them so they can set you up for success in the insurance world. Also want to shout out Cottonwood Coffee and Bistro. They're the OGs. They've been with us from the beginning. Check out their spot on Main before the game. Make sure you get all fueled up and get some caffeine flowing through the veins so that way you can cheer your loudest at the Dana. Don't forget their spot, the Bistro, where your boy worked as a young little tyke. As I was making my way through the college experience, definitely want to get with their baristas there. They're far better than me. Could never even make any latte art. Just a bum. They have great eats as well. Make sure you try them out. They have a great breakfast burrito, breakfast options, brunch options, you name it. They've got tea, they've got coffee on drip, and as I mentioned, espresso options as well, so you can get your caffeine fix. Last but not least, head out to cottonwoodcoffee.com to make sure you can get your auto subscription for your coffee fix, tea fix direct to your door. They also roast their own beans, which is always a value add. So make sure you check them out. Shout out to them for continuing to sponsor the pod. Brian, it was a successful Saturday in Brookings this past week. We were able to notch another dub against the Grizz of Montana. It got kind of dicey early. Thought we were going to shoot ourselves in the foot yet again with an unforced error, but had all the faith in the world in our defense. What stood out to you in Saturday's performance?
Yeah, honestly, just the way the defense flew around. I think Mark looked really confident. It's probably his best game of the year, so it's nice to see that, we haven't peaked yet. So that's super exciting to see. A lot of teams haven't seen, Mark play as well as he has in the past. And if that's how he's going to play the rest of the year, we got a good shot.
Yeah, to that point, Mark ran for 2 touchdowns, passed for 2 touchdowns, looking like a real Josh Allen prototype there in his own right, albeit against the FCS comp, but still very similar in terms of getting it done as a dual threat, almost even a triple threat, because I thought he got robbed on a receiving touchdown. I had heart palpitations watching that ball just hang up in the air. But kudos to the Jackrabbit offensive staff for scheming something that certainly nobody was expecting. Even though their own team, I'm sure, was a bit shocked that it was called, for guys who are on the defensive side of the ball that aren't watching offensive install and the plays that they're running through during the week. I'm sure that was quite the sight to see as Mark rumbled all the way down to the half yard line there. It was pretty exciting to watch. But yeah, man, I couldn't agree more from the perspective. It was a pretty complete game. I think that you got to look at the balanced approach. Obviously, we got it done on the ground, got it done through the air. Wildy had a field day. Mark threw some absolute dots where it looked like the ball was on a string. Really cleaning up some accuracy that we hadn't necessarily seen throughout the course of the year, at least not on a consistent basis. He's definitely, throughout his career, shown that he can throw with touch. He can throw the deep ball. He can throw the intermediate ball, and then he can check down when needed. So, like you said, it's great to see that we haven't peaked yet in that domain. And then when you look at, just weathering the storm, the ebbs and flows of defense, getting great takeaways, confusing. Ayat, the quarterback of Montana, young kid who hasn't, seen a ton of variation, certainly not a defense of the caliber of South Dakota State, perhaps not since Montana State when they played them. But, Tucker playing safety back there, Rob in the middle of the field on what was starting to be a promising drive for them and slamming the door shut with a pick. And I know he was upset that he got tackled, but maybe we'll get another one this week. There's going to be more opportunities, but Bach also showing up, man, and, dodging the invisible ghosts out there and making sure, almost only counting horseshoes and hand grenades, right? So he almost tripped, but he got it done. 30-yard pick six. Love to see it.
No, for sure, because he's had a few that, he's picked it off and he's got it down in the 10, the 5, and just to finally see him get across the goal line is pretty special to see. I mean, I think you could see it all in the way, Jimmy embraced him on the sideline, was like, finally,
Right.
So it's awesome.
It's tough. It's tough to house it, whether you're an offensive player or not. Getting in that end zone is precious. Definitely celebrate when you get there. It's great to see him, Captain America, just goes about his business, gets it done the right way every day and week in and week out. And so he's done it for so long. He just carries on that rich tradition of really sound linebackers South Dakota State's had, right? Like the Freemans and the Rose Booms, who's doing his thing, notched a sack last night in the NFL. Shout out to the NFL Jacks and Rose Boom there. And, just continuing that legacy that's been left by even his head coach, Coach Rogers. So exciting to see. And we'll need it. We'll need it this week because the aerial attack of UIW is going to come in hot and ready to rock and ready to take the tops off. So something we'll have to give here on Saturday at 11 a.m. in Brookings. Let's do a quick weather check, man. I don't know what I know. We're living a little bit south.
How does it feel in Texas right now?
Good old Brookings. It's a nice cool 60. It's a little rainy. It's not the greatest weather right now, but when you look at Brookings, it's currently 17 degrees. Tomorrow it's going to be 19 with a high of 30. So no precipitation scheduled, but it's going to be a little bit different than 60 degrees down here in Texas.
Them boys have no idea what they're going into.
Right.
I can tell you right now, like if I had to go play a game after being here in Florida, oh my God, I'd be miserable.
Right. And San Antonio is where UIW hails from, for those who are unfamiliar. They're kind of establishing themselves as a preeminent playoff program in the FCS ranks. I think, they didn't get an at-large bid last year. They decided to bolster the schedule a little bit with the Southland being down, as you can see, because SLU should have gotten an opportunity more than likely with an at-large bid in the playoffs, especially when you look at the CAA's underperformance in the playoffs this year. And I think that, you look at 2022 UIW squad that had another opportunity to dethrone the previous year's champs in North Dakota State. They stubbed their toe, kind of let that game get away from them. Obviously, different man at the helm. GJ Kinney is now at Texas State with the Cats, doing his thing at the Group of 5 level. But UIW is going to struggle and consistently have issues given they're in San Antonio, more largely populated area. They're going to get poached. And I think it's going to be difficult for them to kind of retain a culture, as you see with a lot of schools, either at the group of 5 level or, mid majors, like at the FCS level. Going to have to disagree with you here, Kevin. Living off one good year. They get talent that cycles through there.
Cam Ward started there.
Cam Ward, obviously preeminent quarterback at the FBS level the last few years at Washington State and at Miami. And that's nothing to scoff at. So there are some dudes that come through there, and definitely some dudes, as we know, following FCS ball, that come through FCS programs. They might not be the Citadel, Kev, but they are UIW. So when you look at their game last week, it was kind of impressive. Not the same weather conditions, but kind of wet and cool, hovering around the 50s. They played Villanova. The lowest scoring game in which they won, I want to say it was like 12-6 or 13-6.
13-6.
13-6. So their defense is capable of rising up when they need it and doing it on the road. So that's something that we should certainly credit them. And but I do think, to actually give some credit to Kev here on this one, playing up in Brookings when the ground is frozen, it's a block of concrete that you're playing on. It's a different story. We'll see if these kids from the South can handle, the pressure of playing in elements that are very bone chilling, literally and figuratively. Can they air the ball out? The ball flies a bit different in this kind of weather. There's a wind factor typically at some point that kind of sporadically emerges. What's your best description of the elements coming from the South and playing up in Brookings?
It's cold as shit. That's the only thing you can say about it. There's no sugarcoating it. It's just cold. Yeah. I'll never forget, getting recruited up there, and Zach Wilson, at the time we went to high school together, he's like, man, it's not that cold, you get used to it. I'm like, all right. So I wore shorts and a jacket, just thinking like, oh, it's not that bad. No, brother. He lied.
That's that Coach Meadows drip right there. He would wear shorts regularly. I think that was just what he did. It's in his DNA, West River guy. He's not going to let it get to him. So there's some different breeds up there. That's for sure. And giants, as I'm sure you saw, just some huge human beings. And, I don't know, Dan weighing in here. It's been around 0 degrees in Brookings last 4 days. Field's going to be as hard as a rock. And that's for damn sure. It definitely is, especially those rubber pellets are going to feel like, little bits of glass as you're sliding across them. I know from my perspective, it's probably better for a defender, right? It's kind of an advantage because, offense is worried about, looking pretty when they do it sometimes, especially the skill. And when they're forced to run between the tackles and try to establish a run game, to stay honest, that can be tough. So
yeah, that's one thing that'll be interesting to see this week for, the word is that they really didn't have a run game when they came to Brookings week 2 or 3. I mean,
now it's worth noting, Calzada, he's a very, very good quarterback. Obviously, He can get it done with his arm, but I think he rushed for over a century mark last week. So we're going to need to contain. I think Coach Rogers even said in his presser that he was more mobile in person than they had necessarily seen on film. Granted, we played them week 2, so it's tough to get a lot of good film on them and understand what kind of version of the team you're going to see until you actually see them. But now that we've got film on them throughout the year, we've seen them in person, we kind of know how they want to go about attacking us. It should lend itself to some success on Saturday, I would think. Talk about being a former defensive lineman who would have to rush against guys who are more mobile.
Yeah, I think at that point in time, it's really not about your individual rush. It's just how all 4 D linemen are rushing together. They have to, every angle has to be covered. One person can't just win and go make a play. Everybody has to contain and not let something slip through the gap. So it's really on every D lineman this week to, contain.
Yeah, and it's going to be incumbent on our edge rushers to not rush past the depth of the quarterback in his final drop, right? Like to squeeze that pocket, maintain your appropriate level of depth when you get upfield. That way you don't create advantageous running lanes. So we've been able to do that in the past. Obviously, we had guys like Easton Stick and other mobile quarterbacks we've had to try to work to contain throughout our playoff runs and throughout our conference matchups. Like Nick Baker comes to mind of Southern Illinois, who is kind of a crafty runner with the ball. I would say, they're not similar in stature, but they're similar in approach in terms of what Calzada's probably going to look to do. And I would say that's going to probably be a point of emphasis. Obviously, they're playing with house money. They're on the road. Nobody expects, obviously, them to come in and dominate, but nobody really expects them to come in and establish a run game. Nobody has to this point on the year, so they're going to need to manufacture it somehow. I would imagine he's going to look to take off and run with it when he can.
No, for sure.
When we look at their statistics as a whole, we'll start with what they do best through the air. So from a passing perspective, Zach Calzada, obviously he's a transfer from Texas A&M. He dethroned Alabama one year, which was pretty impressive. Obviously, very few people were able to accomplish that, even, when they stayed at the FBS level and continued careers. He was one of few to get it done. His completions throughout the year have been 310. He's thrown it 477 times. He does have 8 picks. He's completing about 65% of his passes, which is really solid considering how often he does throw the rock. He's got 3,500 passing yards on the year and some change, and he's got 34 TDs, which is quite remarkable. That's pretty insane when you look at it. And then when you take a gander at who he's delivering the ball to, obviously number 6, Jalen Walthall, he's going to be the cream of the crop from their receiving core. He's played in every game this year. He's caught 76 balls for 1,200 plus yards. He's got 14 TDs too, so he is the go-to guy. He's got a long of 71, and if memory serves, that might have come against us. Not too positive. I think it was certainly an explosive play against us that saw him reach pay dirt. Then you got Roy Alexander, number 9, so 6 and 9. Both played in all games this year. He's got more catches, 87, but he's got fewer yards. He's coming in at just over 1,000 on the year. So 2,000-yard receivers on the year. He's just a hair behind Walthall at 12 touchdowns with a long of 56. So they are the workhorses who are going to get it done in the receiving game. Hopefully we can lock them down with Dallas Beanham on the edge, Colby Humphrey, and obviously Tucker Large and Durant's cleaning it up on the back end. You also have Josh Lorick, number 11, who's played in every game this year. He's got 44 for 481, no touchdowns, so maybe a chain mover there. And then you got Logan Compton, number 89. He's played in every game as well. He's notched 16 for 208 with 4 touchdowns. So in terms of their touchdown production, those are the 3 guys, Walthall, Alexander, and Compton. Then you look at Mason Pierce. He's got 27 catches for just under 200 yards this year with 2 touchdowns. And then you've got way down the line here in terms of overall receptions, you've got 7 catches for 68 yards and 3 touchdowns coming by way of Jackson Lowe, number 18. So he spreads it around, but the bulk of production is going to come from Jalen and Roy, number 9 and 6 on the roster. So that'll be interesting to see how we match up, what they look to do to try to attack us through the air. Then on the ground, you got DeKalon Taylor. He's only played in 11 games. He's rushed for just under 1,000 yards, and he's got 9 touchdowns on the year. So he can get it done. He's got a long of 97. Granted, that's in, I believe they're the Southland. So Southland Conference, does it play D, does it not, is kind of a crapshoot. That's not a knock. That's just the reality of things. And then when you look at other guys who are going to shoulder the workload. You got Lontrell Turner, number 0. He's rushing for just over 500 yards on the season, and he's got 2 touchdowns. Calzada, like I mentioned, he's their 3rd leading rusher, just a hair under 500 yards, 493 with 4 touchdowns on the year. His long is 33, so he's not going to necessarily, house one every time, but he's capable of big play ability, and he can create plays with his legs. So we should be mindful of that. So that's kind of what we're looking like in terms of the makeup of distribution, in terms of who's going to touch the rock, who's going to try to make their presence known, and who's going to be an influence in the game. Did you ever play in your career, Brian, teams multiple times?
I mean, North Dakota State, the first national championship, we played them twice.
Right. So with a team that has familiarity like that on one another, obviously them being an intra-conference foe, what do you think? What do you think some advantages or disadvantages are of seeing a team multiple times?
I mean, I really think it throws, the gimmicks out a little bit, because you kind of get the feel for the flow of the game, what they like to do. Now, granted, we didn't play someone that early in the season and then play them that late in the season as well. So you don't really know, the different nuances of the offense. So
right. That's a good point. And in the first matchup, if memory serves, we did not tackle well. I don't think.
And Calzada, or however you say his name, he threw for 350 yards on the Jacks. Yeah. I don't know when's the last QB to do that.
I don't think. I mean, even homeboy for Oklahoma State didn't throw for that many. Probably Carson Wentz, to be honest, long time ago.
Yeah, so.
Or maybe Nick Baker from 21. It's been ages, man. We have not had anybody put up 350. And that's, so that's a phenomenal point. That's the outlier there. He might get his yardage, but can the Jacks be the team that bends but doesn't break? I hate that damn cliche, but if they're not getting in the end zone, they're not getting in the end zone, and they got to win. So.
And that's one of the few teams to get over 10 points on the Jacks this year. So
yeah, with just pure offensive production and not some fluke like fumble recovery or something like that. So right. Yeah, that's an excellent point.
4 seconds left on the clock or whatever it was.
Right. And I think too, when you look at, special teams played a factor in that game too, if memory serves, because I think Angel Johnson housed one, but there was a holding call.
Kick. I think he took the opening kick back.
Yeah, and then there was a holding call that negated it. So there's a lot to consider when you look at it from an overall perspective. When you look at their team statistics, I want to say they're giving up about 360-ish yards per game. I'll pull it up here quick. Yeah, so they're giving up 21 points a game, but they're scoring 35, right? When you look at their rushing yardage, they're giving up, let's see, average per game. They're giving up about 125 a game, and they're accumulating 173. So obviously, the Jacks are holding opponents to under 90. Something's got to give there. I don't think they really rushed for many at all against us in the first showdown. Most of obviously their accumulated yardage is going to come through the air. Their overall yardage per game is 277. So about 100 more in terms of production than what they accomplish on the ground. Now they're giving up a ton through the air too. So I remember in the first matchup, I think Wildy went off. He had like 10 receptions at least in that game. Really established a connection with Mark that I was pretty shocked that we didn't see continue throughout the next string of games there. Now, granted, our defense really put the clamps down our next several opponents all the way up to even recent weeks, right? But, our run game really was able to just get it done, and we were able to get out of there early with starters really not playing a lot in the second half for the next string of games. So that connection didn't need to be established, but we saw this past week that connection is alive and well. We mentioned some dots, absolute dimes were thrown to Wildy and co on the weekend last week. And so something's got to give in that department. They're giving up 20 touchdowns through the air to their 36 that they've achieved, which is a ton, right? So 34 from Calzada, 2 from the backup contingent. Again, 3,600 total yards on the season is definitely nothing to scoff at. We're going to need to do our due diligence in that department. But when we look at special teams, as we mentioned, in terms of kickoff returns, they are giving up, let's see. Doesn't really say return average, just says what they've got. But I mean, obviously that's always a threat when you kick to Angel or when you kick to Kirby back there. There's always an opportunity to set the offense up in prime scoring position, even if they don't house it. So we'll have to look to see if that's a factor early. I would imagine we'd want to defer because our defense is pretty stout. Maybe want to take the ball too, just to kind of throw a little curveball at them. Who knows? That'll be interesting to see how the game starts there. But from the kicking department, they're only averaging about 36, 37 yards per punt, and their opponents are around 44. So Hunter, when he's called upon to punt, I'm sure he'll do an excellent job. He's really excelled in that department this year. I would say that is his predominant facet of the special teams unit that he commands is the punting. I'd like to see continued progress in the field goal domain. We could get a little bit better there, especially considering last game as well. And then you look at their field goal percentage, 15 out of 18 on the year. That's pretty good. So they've not had to onside it yet this year, so we'll see if that becomes a factor on Saturday as well. In terms of penalties, they, if memory serves, in the first game, they had quite a few. It was a sellout again at the Dana, so hopefully the atmosphere and the environment with the last opportunity to see this version of the Jacks, potentially, more than likely, what better chance to show up and show out and get loud and be an influence in the game, hopefully drawing some more offsides penalties, whether it be offense or defense, because, that was a problem for Montana this past weekend.
No, for sure. Maybe Buddy can go, viral for all the complaining on the sideline instead of rapping lyrics, because good Lord, I feel like every play he was complaining about something.
Instead of rapping lyrics, clue me in. What's the story there?
Yeah, I mean, last game before they played Villanova, he was rapping lyrics to the song. Everybody was going viral on Twitter. Congrats, okay, bud. Let's see you come to Brookings and rap. Hopefully it'll, give some momentum.
I saw he's a little swaggy. He's what I would deem an unpoised version of Jimmy. But relatively fit coach. I don't know if he played. I would, I'm not trying to throw shade at him. I would doubt he was an All-American linebacker, but we'll see. He's not necessarily, he wasn't poised in the last one. And I think when you're taking on perennial defending back-to-back champions at their house, you're trying to probably ignite some fire and some juice in your team. So I kind of understand it, but complaining, bro, is never going to get it done on the sidelines. And then just from a coach's perspective, me being an old ass man now, it's like, you gotta maintain your poise. Cause if you're not poised on the sideline, your team is going to start to crack, right? Cause as you go, they go.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you could see that too. All the unsportsmanlike penalties they were having. I mean, I think that was the biggest takeaways coming out of that game. It was like, oh, this team's just not disciplined. We'll sit here and run the ball down your throat and play defense the whole time. So,
absolutely. Kev weighs in with some great insight here. He's got a big mouth and he's short. Probably why Labanowitz loves him. Yeah, definitely. He's cut from the stone cloth, right? Like gunslinger mentality and, stubs his toe in the end because he's got little man syndrome and all. No, I'm just kidding. But no, it'll be fascinating to see how his team is prepared coming into this, and if they are able to kind of quell some of that anxiety of the moment and see if they can be poised and mature. We'll have to just tune in to see, but it doesn't lend itself to history is a great indicator of future success or lack thereof. So we'll see how it goes. He does have more hair than Stone, as Dan mentioned, so he's definitely got that going for him.
Shout out Stone. We need to get Stone on the pod.
We do. We need to get him on the pod redemption for the preview of North Dakota State. That little shit picked them as well. So we're going to have to get him back on the pod and bump his gums a little bit here and there. But yeah, man, I'm just excited for Mark and the squad to really rise up. We got to see our offensive line continue to hold their water. They do have some defenders that can make some waves. Obviously, again, going back to last week against Villanova, they only surrendered 6 points on the road, which is very tough to do no matter what environment you're in, especially when the stakes are second round chance to punch your ticket to the quarters. So kudos to them. They got it done. We'll see if they can establish themselves as a true blue blood and upend the Jacks. So it's going to take the 605 Hogs playing like the 605 Hogs, like they have most of the year this year. Can't have any instances where they play like the 603 Hogs. You know, that's a little fun. I like to play with them. But, Evan Biernston, he's going to have to stand up and play with 10 toes down, as the kids like to say nowadays. Same thing for Gus. Gus is going to have to get it done. Can't allow any internal penetration in the pocket for those times that we do need to throw. I think, we allowed 1 sack last week. So I think we're only allowing 7 total on the year. But it was in a time that pushed us out of field goal range, I think, on the first drive of the third quarter. So
that and the turnover, that's not a sack, but that definitely, there's a lot of penetration there. And
yeah, there was miscommunication on the line. Job security is ball security. And as good as Angel is, Amar had the hot hand on Saturday. And he really has had, I know we clown around a lot about it in our text thread, but he really does have Jackrabbit Nation lately. He's definitely been the workhorse and the guy who's carried the torch for the rushing attack. And it'll be interesting to see, do we see Chase Mason emerge as that Gator back for just to get his body into the flow, or do we shelf him for another week? I'd hate to shelf a guy and him not be able to play the rest of the year because things don't go our way. So it'll be cool to see if he lines up in the backfield and gets a taste again of some playoff action in this 2024 campaign. So that'll be something fascinating to watch. I know if he does not, Kirby's probably going to be that short down back like he has been throughout the year and really in recent weeks again. He shed that knee brace, so I think he's probably feeling more healthy than he has, and he's looking really good as well. Just need to be mentally tough too, right, Brian?
No, for sure. And shout out them young guys. Wildy went over 1,000 yards. Bryce, freshman All-American.
Hell yeah.
A lot of people, had a lot of questions coming into the year of who was going to be who was going to step into the roles of everybody that left. And it's just awesome to see people take advantage of their moment.
Yeah, and I picked Bryce. He was my player to watch on defense last week. So, I mean, he continues to prove us right and, prove his dedication and work ethic right for being a young buck who's getting accolades like that, man. That the sky's the limit for him to continue to grow and develop into a premier pass rusher at this level, especially a guy from the interior as yourself. That's tough, man.
For sure. No, I mean, it's tough to do anywhere, especially, being a young guy coming in and learning how to play the game the right way. And I would say Bryce has done that since he stepped foot on campus. He always attacked it the right way. And I mean, that's really why I got to play a little bit last year, So it's really cool just to see everything unfold how it has.
Certainly. What in your opinion is the most difficult aspect of being an interior defensive lineman generating a pass rush?
Yeah, I would say just play action pass, especially in the Missouri Valley. You get a lot of play action pass where you're used to playing the run, and then they hit you with play action until you have to transition pass rush. It's not very too often that you get to just line up and have a one-on-one. Sometimes you're having to break the slide or cover up for the other D tackle whenever, he takes his A to A every now and then. So
definitely.
Cool.
Yeah. And I don't care where it comes from, but like we said last week, we got to continue to generate a pass rush. I'd like to see more come from the edge, but to be quite honest, I love it when it comes from the interior because really it's lights out when you're able to generate a dent in the interior offensive line and collapse the pocket, spill the cup, as they say, to where, you're forcing either a throw with contact in his face or you're obviously causing him to go down or escape outside the pocket. In which case, hopefully, our guys are maintaining rush lanes against Calzada.
Right.
So it'll be fun to see. Man, let's kind of take a quick gander and just do an overview. I haven't had a chance to deep dive into all the quarterfinals matchups, but we do have tomorrow as well, or tonight actually at 8 o'clock. Tonight at 8 o'clock, we have the Fighting X out of Moscow, Idaho, and the Vandals taking on the number 1 overall seed, Montana State. What do we like in that game? What do we think is going to happen? We know Coach Eck is going to throw the kitchen sink at him in terms of preparation and looks, and he's not afraid to be a riverboat gambler and, maybe have a tight end throw a pass to the quarterback.
I would say they're a lot healthier going into this round too. I think they were on their 3rd or 4th quarterback last time they played. Mm-hmm. And on top of that, I mean, talk about hard to play someone twice. Imagine having to game plan for Eck twice.
Yeah. Exactly.
You see all the shit he throws at you the first time and you're like, oof. Glad we got out of that one. And now you got to play him again and you're like, what did he not throw at us already?
And don't sleep on that. Don't sleep on that fire cut from Coach Schleissner over there. That fire haircut. You never know what he's got cooking up underneath that thing. So shout out to Coach Schleissner, former tight ends coach of the South Dakota State Jackrabbits, as well as Dan Jackson. He's now on their defensive side of the ball doing things. I believe he's the D coordinator. Might be. Yeah, he's a D coordinator there. So they were able to obviously stand up this year and weather adversity and get themselves into the quarters. A lot of people had them throughout the year making a bigger waves and being a higher seed, but when push comes to shove, they're in the quarters too. So I'm sure they'll take it going into Bozeman. But with that said, they're really going to need to stifle the rushing attack because we know nobody likes to run the ball more and in different ways than Montana State. I would say South Dakota State and North Dakota State being a close second to that. Definitely us being the 1A, 1B this year. Relative to North Dakota State, who's leaned a lot more on Cam Miller. It's going to be fascinating. I think that the last time a Big Sky team beat Montana State was Idaho. I think they only gave up 123 rushing yards to them. I think I saw a stat floating around the interwebs about that, which is remarkable, and they'll need that in this contest. If they can keep them under $150, I think that a lot of people would give the nod to the Vandals if that's the case.
No, for sure, especially with everything that Eck can do on offense.
Yep. Conversely, it'll all boil down to if Idaho can establish and maintain drives, maybe get some explosive plays. But I think time of possession, right? Time of possession is my X factor in that game because when you have a team that wants to establish the run and really play keep away, which they'll need to do because Idaho's strength on any Coach Eck team is probably going to be their offense, right? It's no shade to their defense. Shout out to Jackson Eck, who made all conference. It was funny seeing the nepotism stuff float around online. And that kid obviously has established himself as a premier player in his own right. And you love to see when that happens. Obviously a kid who kind of grew up partially in Brookings. That's always fun to see. But their defense is obviously going to play second fiddle to any Coach Eck team on offense. So if they can play keep away from Montana State in that rushing attack, watch out.
And I would say Montana State has to finish the game too because they got out big on UC Davis, and UC Davis snuck back in and had a chance to win it. So
that's right.
Can't take advantage of their moment.
Phenomenal segue into the next matchup we should talk about. So Vermilion getting to host another quarterfinals matchup, and to be honest, it didn't bode well for them last time when they got absolutely smacked by the Cows from up north. Who do you like in the UC Davis USD game?
I think it's got to go to USD. As much as I hate to say it, but I think UC Davis relies on number 3 a little bit too much, almost to their own right, that if we let him get his a little bit, stop everything else, we're okay. And can they stop the run? I mean, it didn't look like they could stop the run whenever they played Montana State, and Tice is a good back.
Yeah, he is. Travis Tice is a good back. He's physical. They'll want to establish a run, and got to shout out Got to shout out Coach Davis for them being able to weather the storm last week and really kind of get it done late as Tarleton gave them a severe scare. I want to say Lan Larison is the number 3. That is the preeminent player for UC Davis. So when you look at that, I think it's going to be interesting how the teams want to attack each other. Obviously, Big Sky football is quite different than Missouri Valley football in a lot of ways. When you look at the style of play of UC Davis, wanting to get it done more through the air or check downs or things like that, get the ball in their playmakers' hands. Lan Larison, obviously, he's a problem when he does. So can South Dakota, bring the juice from a defensive perspective? Will Marquise Gray, will he be able to, be an established factor on defense? Will he create disruption in the pocket? Who knows? Will their fans show up?
I mean, that's another point too, is like, it still boils down to being a Big Sky offensive line,
Yep.
I'd say there's a lot better O-line play in the Missouri Valley. And on top of that, I would say the safety and nickel is a strong spot for USD. Even when we played them, so 3 is going to have to line up on them guys a lot. And so I would have to lean USD for sure.
I agree. Miles Hastings is their quarterback. He's hurled that pigskin around the field this year. He's out producing even Calzada. He's got 4,000 yards through the air, 35 touchdowns. He's bested Calzada in that department. He does have 2 more picks, but he's put the ball up 20, 30 more times. So that's pretty impressive. And when you factor that in, that's almost a full game more of production through the air in terms of attempts. Bauman is an X factor for USD as well. He's a heady player. Obviously, he can make plays late, like we witnessed in the North Dakota State matchup with the Yotes. Lan Larison obviously is their X factor. He's carrying the ball for 1,400 yards on the season, but also, peep this dude, 850 yards almost through the air. I mean, that is an absolute dude. So if they can shut him down, I mean, that's literally that's a boatload of production that they can account for if they can bottle him up. And then you have Pierre Jr. on the other side. He's over 1,000 yards on the season on very limited carries, relatively only 151. He's got 15 TDs on the year. And then, of course, we did mention Travis Tice, who's more their physical back, who's going to tote the rock in the red zone and goal-to-go situations. Carter Bell's their go-to receiver on offense. As we know, we've seen him. We've seen that cat. 46 receptions, about 700 yards and 3 touchdowns. So clearly they want to establish a run above all else as well, play good defense, get off on 3rd down, stuff like that. I will say you're exactly right. I think the matchup to watch is going to be safety nickel and what they're able to do in terms of bottling up Larison.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the kid's name from USD, but number 2, when South Dakota State played them, that was an outlier for them. I thought
he came
physical.
Up to Phil. Yeah. He came up to Phil. He created that fumble that led to,
Marquise Gray picking it up to score.
Exactly. Yeah, man. So those are the 2 outside matchups other than South Dakota State, UIW. And then you look at the final one, which, I'd like to see Mercer handle business, but we're not going to be – we're not smoking that Hunter Biden tonight.
Come on, brother.
We got, the Cows up north, the margin of assumed victory according to the odds. It's given NDSU 18. The overall is 53.5. So we'll see, man. I think North Dakota State isn't going to start as slow like they did against Abilene Christian, falling in the hole 17-3 at one point in that game. I think that Mercer has definitely made strides to overcome getting Mercered at Brookings last year. Shout out Fighting B-Wills on the defense for getting a shutout. But, obviously it's a different animal. Same beast, different animal up there in Fargo. And I think there's one team that's truly built for that, and we know who that is. And we're excited to see if that matchup comes to fruition after Saturday. So, when you look at Mercer, just to kind of give them their flowers, Neubauer, their quarterback, he's thrown for 1,300 on the year, 11 touchdowns. He is taking good care of the ball, only 3 picks. Their lead rushing weapon is McGee. He's got 219 carries for 1,100 yards and 8 touchdowns. And then Parsons is getting it done through the air with 608 yards in 4 touchdowns. That offensive production just doesn't scream to me.
Can you throw Kevin's comment up on the screen here?
Absolutely.
I mean, who does Mercer? Is Mercer playing Citadel every week? I mean,
this isn't the Sisters of the Blind here. This is Missouri Valley competition, Kevin. I know it's not Citadel, but I think we might see 1 or 2 rushing touchdowns from the old Cows reach pay dirt, especially at home in Fargo. Their last several opponents, they only got it done by 7 against Rhode Island. So if we're going to comp Rhode Island and North Dakota State, then I'm Santa Claus. So, yeah,
I would actually with Mercer though. It is kind of cool to see, new head guy, new offensive coordinator, and just to see them back in the same position.
Phenomenal point, Brian, because last year when I saw their head guy dip, I was like, "Oh, they're done." I guess they won't establish themselves as a program. Obviously, they lost an NFL wide receiver who we absolutely shut down. But to see them back here and to take a step, because they lost was it the quarters last year or was it the second round? I think it was the second round.
It was second round.
Yeah, so they took a step. I mean, for them to lose their head guy, have new coordinators, and to be able to take a step, shout out the Fighting Macon Bears out of Mercer.
I think they hired their guy out of Lenore Ryan too. So
yeah, D2 guy, solid. Yeah. Lenore Ryan, for those of you who don't know, is a heavy D2, good recruiting squad down there, and I want to say is in one of the Carolinas.
Where Lenore Ryan?
Yeah, exactly. So Kevin will probably like that. He loves Carolina. But like the Dakotas, they're separate. It's not Carolina. It's not Dakota. It's South and North Dakota. And on that note, it looks like the ESPN interns still can't get it done because they don't know the difference between Arizona and Arizona State. So they had Arizona pop up on a graphic that would be a wild card outside dark horse to get it done. So I think it's freaking hilarious to see. Shout out Kevin for this nugget. Mike Houston handing the Jackson an L in one of the semifinals matchups several years ago. The Fighting James Madison Dukes, when he was their head coach, he got let go this year from Charlotte, but he took not Charlotte, rather East Carolina. So he definitely tried to make waves at the FBS, but that's another guy out of Lenore Ryan. So pretty impressive. The last several opponents, like I was running through for Mercer, just to give them some run time here. Rhode Island only got it done 17-10. A win is a win, especially in the playoffs. But that's kind of tough sledding when you're only producing that much against a Rhode Island defense out of the CAA. They did drop a ton on Furman, 49 points they put up, and then only 7 to Alabama. So they've definitely seen talent. So they're not going to be afraid of the moment, but I just think that playing in that environment, not having the offensive production necessary, they're going to rely on a complete and utter collapse from the opponent in order to get it done. Cam Miller is what he is. He's probably going to win the Walter Payton this year, if that hasn't already been decided. I think it was decided long ago personally, but yeah, he's playing lights out, next level. Can they establish a consistent run game? Not to overplay the run defense of Mercer, but can they establish a consistent run game to where he's not having to do everything? That'll be the question for them.
And if they do get the lead, can they not shoot themselves in the foot?
Right.
I mean, who they play like Abilene Christian? Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they're up 17-3, faking a punt, 4th and 14.
Right.
What are we doing?
And allowing a kick return touchdown after they went up 17-3. So complete, overhaul of the game's momentum when you allow a score on special teams, especially on the road. So the moment became too big for them. I mean, I know they probably were felt like they were playing with house money. They're going to, pull out all the stops, but they just could not get it done. And that's the difference between Missouri Valley football, dude, and the rest. Like, let's be real here. It's Missouri Valley and a handful of teams from the Big Sky is what it is. So when you have the top 4 schools from the Valley, I should say top 3 schools from the Valley earning the top 4 seeds, come on, man. Like, let's stop, splitting hairs. It's Missouri Valley and it's the Big Sky, and then it's potential outliers that at least make it to the quarters, and they don't make it much farther than that. So, but UC Davis has a chance to prove us wrong. Idaho, Montana State have a chance to prove us wrong, and we'll see where the chips fall in the end. Is it going to be another All Valley title? Is it going to be, because it could be North Dakota State versus USD, or it could be South Dakota State versus USD, or it could be Montana State or Idaho versus North Dakota State or South Dakota State, or, UIW or Mercer. It'll be interesting to see where the chips fall in the end. But let's dive into our expected players of the game for South Dakota State and UIW. Who do you like on defense, Brian?
Defense, I was watching the JI podcast, and I was like giving them crap for not giving no D lineman any love. Of course, had to. But I mean, in all reality, they're right. They don't have any run game. I think they got to get the ball out fast. I would say player of the game to watch for me on defense is Franzel.
Okay, I like that one. Yeah, he's been flying around all year, right? And then that's what gave him nod for Buck Buchanan voting. I do think that it's going to be heavy aerial assault, right? And I am going to go – well, I was going to go DB just for that reason, because we're going to need to lock him down. But I am going to go D-line, because I'm going to say it's incumbent on the D-line to generate a pass rush so that our DBs aren't on an island out there. And I wonder if we're going to heat him up. I know we like to heat up the quarterbacks, but this is a savvy vet now. He'll understand what's been thrown at him. But will Bobbitt and company be able to be some wizards back there and channel their innermost Eck on the defensive side of the ball? We'll see. That being said, I'm going to go with DePriest. I think we need to see some baptisms. I think it's going to be his final go-round potentially in Brookings, unless Mercer gets it done, which could happen. But that being said, I think he's going to get it done in the trenches and get Calzada off his spots.
I like it.
So on offense, I mean, I had to pick one if you weren't going to go D-line, right? We have to have a chain game.
I mean, I was hoping.
Yep.
Couldn't be a homer my whole life.
Yeah, I know. And then, like I would say, keep a close eye on Hawthorne. I do think he's going to create some fits with transition pass rush in there when he gets his opportunities.
I would say, correct me if I'm wrong, but I felt like we were getting really good pressure off the edge from Rip last time around.
We were. That's a great point. Dawson Ruperto was getting good pressure, forcing him to move around. See, that's the other thing. In the last game, Calzada was moving in the pocket very well. He's a very good quarterback, and there's a reason he went FBS P4, right? So, so hopefully we can bottle that up and contain it. So on offense, who do we like? I'll let you start it off.
Give me Mark. Last week it was awesome to see. I think whenever we played UIW in the first time around, I felt like that was one of his better games. So I'd like to see him build off of it.
I love it. It's to the point, and it's a very good point, because I think Captain 11 is going to get it done. When we look at their weaknesses on defense, they struggle through the air. And I don't think anything's really changed probably throughout the course of the season that's going to see a dramatic improvement, especially after not being able to bottle up Wildy. He went off. Wildy's going to go off again. He's peaking at the right moment. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up with about 8 grabs on the day for $115 and at least 1 score. So I'm going to go that far even and stamp some numbers on it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point, because he went, 10 for 106 last game. So
Yep.
I like it.
And keep an eye. You never know how those tight ends might emerge, especially, over the middle, set up some of that intermediate passing game. I do like how Alpers is playing in the run game, and he's got a little piss and vinegar in him, which you like to see. I think that special teams could be the X factor. I hope it's boring, but you never know. So from special teams perspective, who do you like?
I think we have to give it to Hunter this week. If we have to punt, I like Hunter to do his job.
Yeah.
Like you said, the field goal unit hasn't been the best. Not all the misses are on him. I think we've had one blocked against NDSU. So I think just as a unit, I would like to see that be better. So
yeah, get their heads out of their asses. Is that what you're saying?
I'm not. If you want to go there, yeah.
You do. You got one job, and that's coming from a guy who didn't always do his. I was a short snapper. One time I let the ball get away from me, but we got the W. So my life was spared in the end. But I had to do my job, and everybody else has to do theirs, and nobody escapes accountability, especially when you're on film. And I believe they can get it done, and I think Hunter will get it done. He's not my pick. I do think he's going to be clean on field goal PAT. I do think he's going to be excellent in the punt game when he's called on. But from a special teams perspective, I'm going to go with Dallas Beanham, because I think he's going to at least put us in good field position to start drives. He's been real reliable catching the punts and at least fair catching them when he needs to. And then, of course, he's been able to house them against some lesser foes out of the Southland. And could he do it again? Time will tell.
Did he have a pick six against Incarnate Word? I know he had a pick. I don't know if he took it back or not.
No, he did not. And I can't remember. I think it was against Augie, but didn't Humphrey have like an unreal pick?
Oh, yeah. And then he ran down and celebrated by himself. And Rogers,
Oh,
it's not
I got
what we
you.
do up here. But
hey, that's a good point. That's another X factor. We saw how much it hurt Incarnate Word last time, drawing unnecessary penalties, unforced errors, me issues. He had a pick six. Tanner, thanks for weighing in, my guy. He had a pick six against CLA or SLU. I prefer to call him CLA because Louisiana is LA in abbreviation. So until they start to win consistently, that's what they're going to get called from me. And he had a punt return. Oh, yeah. He had a pick that he returned really far against CLA, but he also had that punt return touchdown.
Gotcha.
So, yeah, again, that's part of the reason that he's my pick, because in games like this, if they get off the field on defense a good number of times, is he going to be able to set him up for a score? I like the odds. Let's dive into score predictions. We've been pretty accurate. We've been pretty close lately. Here, and I'll give you some added context. They are giving up. Let's see how many points per game. Points per game, they're giving up 21.3, and they're scoring 35, just so you know. I think they scored 24 last time, too, just so you know.
Yeah, no. I think we play more to our standard of football. It's going to be cold. We're going to run the fucking ball. I think it's going to be 24-6.
Ooh, okay. We scored 42 on them last time. We took the tops off through the air and were able to rack up a lot of quick, explosive plays. I'm going to say 45. 45-17. I want to say 21. I'm going to say 45-17. So that's what we're going with.
Stings. They must be trying to get in the end zone. 4 seconds left.
24. I feel like a couple times some of their scores where it was third and long, and then they had a tunnel screen that they housed. Poor tackling, out of position in terms of timing, not good eye discipline. Poor tackling throughout the game that allowed some drives to continue. I think they're going to rep the hell out of, QB contain this week. And I think interior pressure, motivation, all those things are going to factor in, and penalties in terms of, the cold creeping into their mentality is going to have an impact because, you can look at the number all you want, a high of 30. But as well as I do, that moisture in there makes that shit feel like it's like negative. And then it starts to creep up late where that blood's not flowing. and you start to slow down, that speed isn't going to emerge on film like it had early on in the year. So that's what's factoring into my prediction there. Instead of, it's not shade to them as much as it is, I think, the nature of playing football in December in Brookings.
Yeah, I just think when it comes down to my score prediction, I really just think we're going to run the ball and control the time of possession.
Hey, I prefer yours. I prefer yours because when it gets up into those high numbers, especially against aerial attack teams, you never know how it could shake out. But, I'd prefer a shutout, but this team has definitely got firepower. And I think that we should definitely take them seriously, and I know they are. So it'll be great to see. We're at the 1 hour mark. I appreciate all y'all that have tuned in, several hundred on the live. And I'm sure wherever you guys are watching, you are excited like we are to watch at 11 Central Time tomorrow on ESPN Plus to see. Actually, I think aren't we featured? Because there's no football. We are on ESPN and ESPN Plus at 11 o'clock. So we're on the flagship tomorrow, y'all. So tune in for that. It's going to be exciting. Weather's going to be just like we talked about all game. It's going to be fun to see how they react to it. Tune in tonight. Make sure.
I hope they come with their shirts off. I'm sorry. I had to say it.
That's so whack. We should have done predictions on that. Let's do predictions on that. I'm going to say they will.
Yeah.
They buy into all this bullshit that all these other schools do. And as soon as they do that, I know we got them.
For sure.
I know we got them.
Nothing like Albany,
Yeah.
Two of them had cowboy hats on. Shout out to them.
Because the minute that they walk out like that, that's the minute that we understand that the moment has become too big for them because they're not focusing on what they should be. They're focusing on the weather. Dan agrees too. I'm sure the majority of listeners here, even if you're neutral observers, I think you're going to think that they're coming out shirtless as well to try to play some mental games, but it doesn't work like that, fellas. It does not. Make sure you watch the game tonight, 8 p.m. I want to say it's ESPN2. Let's confirm. It's between Idaho. It's on ESPN flagship as well. Idaho plays at Montana State, just as a reminder. Tomorrow as well is the other two quarterfinals matchups. UC Davis and South Dakota naturally are just getting runtime on ESPN Plus. But Mercer and North Dakota State's going to get on ABC at 2:30 tomorrow Central Time. So that'll be good to see who we're going to match up with in that one. Yeah, man. Want to shout out our sponsors one more time. Thank you to the Wild Hair of Brookings, South Dakota. Make sure you get into watch all your content there, whether it be Jack's basketball, men and women's games, maybe catch some wrestling duels there, whatever it is. Make sure you support them because they're supporting us. We appreciate you greatly. Check out their specials. They're running every single day. They got something good. Shout out to Udemark Insurance. When life throws you curveballs and you need products that work with Medicare for health insurance, check them out. They're licensed in Iowa, Minnesota, and South Dakota. So appreciate them for sponsoring us. DM me if you want details on how to link up with them. And shout out to Cottonwood Coffee and Bistro of Brookings, South Dakota. They have your caffeine fix ready to rock for your Jacks game on Saturday. They also have great eats at the Bistro. And then, as always, don't forget to check them out at cottonwoodcoffee.com so you can subscribe and get coffee that you love direct to your door. With that, Brian, appreciate you, brother. Go big,
Yes,
go blue,
go Jack.
Jack.